Kia ora whanau. Hi everyone. Welcome to Shore Vineyard Church on this Sunday. Well, of course you may be watching this midweek, but whether you're part of our congregation or you just found us online, I really hope you feel part of this community, and I'm sure you will enjoy this service. My name is Paulina. I live with my husband Chris, and we have two young adult daughters who are both at uni, so we're quite a busy household. Usually kind of gather in the kitchen around Kai, and luckily we also all enjoy exercise, often in pairs, so that can be quite hilarious and it provides a nice balance. I hope you've been enjoying this little bit more freedom over this past few weeks. I know I have. Hasn't it been heartwarming to see so many families out on the beaches together? Speaking of freedom and outdoors, as soon as we drop another step in alert levels and we'll be allowed to gather in groups of 25 people max, we're going to reintroduce church in parks all around the North Shore. This will look very much like the same format. We'll have kai, korero and karakia, which is of course food, conversation and also prayer. Meantime, please stay connected, reach out to each other, and also do join the Wharenui Facebook page. And if you're not getting our weekly pastoral email, please email us on shore@svc.org.nz. They've been a great source of encouragement and updates of what's been going on and what is happening around our whānau. Any other needs, pastoral needs, please also email shore@svc.org.nz and someone will get back to you. We're now going to have a time of worship with Tim Wood. That will be followed by a message by our former Associate Pastor Calvin Culverwell, who is also serving on our board at the moment. So I'm very much looking forward to the wisdom Calvin has to share. He'll be speaking around mental health, mental well-being in this time of lockdown, so it'll be quite relevant to many of us, I guess. Also, Calvin will be exploring some contemplative practices, which also I'm really looking forward to tapping into. After that, there'll be some questions for you to tackle either by yourselves, obviously, or in your bubble, that they'll be providing you some material for korero and karakia. But first up, here's Tim with Jesus, We Love You. So sing your hearts out, get into God's presence. I so look forward to seeing you all again, hopefully soon. Take care. Bye for now.
Have passed away, your love has stayed the same, your constant grace remains the cornerstone. Things that we thought were dead are breathing in life again. You cause your sun to shine on darkest nights. For all that you've done, we will pour out our love. This will be our anthem song. Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one that our hearts adore. The hopeless have found their hope. The orphans now have a home. Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one that our hearts adore. Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one that our hearts adore. That our hearts adore. Our hearts adore.
Kia ora koutou church whānau. I'm really missing you all and looking forward to being in a space where we get to gather once more and do life together. Very grateful this Sunday to just be sharing with you and taking you through some stuff. Through my work and even just in my sort of assessment of myself, I've become very aware of the need to look after my mental well-being and for all of us really to be aware of where we're at and doing things to tend to our inner garden and to nurture our mental health during this time, because it's just riddled with uncertainty. In psychology, when we think about mental health, we actually think about it on a spectrum. And that spectrum goes from depression down one end to flourishing on the other side. When we talk about this idea of flourishing, what we're talking about is this sort of peak of well-being. And when you're flourishing, you've got a very strong sense of meaning, a sense of mastery in terms of what you're doing, a sense of really mattering to others and to the world around you. And then way down the other end, you have this thing of depression, where you are kind of existing in a valley of ill-being, the opposite of well-being. You feel despondent, you feel drained, you feel worthless. And so that's the sort of spectrum we're moving on. I just want to be very clear, I'm not talking so much about clinical depression, which is sort of existing long-term in that sort of hopeless void. But what I'm really talking about here is sort of more of a social or commonplace movement in terms of mental well-being. We all have moments where we feel depressed and anxious, sad, low, angry, disconnected from the world around us. It's very normal, but often there's a bit of a movement or transience through that spectrum. And so that's really just what I want to talk about. How do we look after ourselves regardless of where we're sitting on that spectrum? And in particular, I also want to highlight this sort of middle child of mental well-being, which is sort of less common, but has been increasing in the social vernacular, which is this idea of languishing. There's a great article, we'll link it in the bottom of this video so you can check it out, where a psychologist, Adam Grant, just explains what it is a little bit. But languishing is sort of the middle child of mental health, and in that space, you don't really have symptoms of like mental illness, but you're also not the picture of mental health either. When you're languishing, you tend to not be functioning at full capacity. Your motivation is dulled. Your ability to focus or to work towards a goal becomes really disrupted. And so typically you tend to wake up in the morning, you feel a little bit apathetic, a little bit lethargic, and just really sort of beginning to feel quite disconnected from your sense of purpose. And so while you're not necessarily having a strong emotional response to it, it's almost like it's a real experience of living in the beige, I think. So if you're sort of identifying, if you imagine 1 to 10, if you're sort of 4, 5, or 6, you're probably teetering somewhere on the languishing thing. 1 to 3, definitely down in that sort of depressive state. And then, 7 upwards, we're starting to move towards a sense of flourishing. So sometimes that's a helpful spectrum to think about that. And so what I want to do is I just want to talk about those 3 spaces a little bit and just offer a contemplative or reflective or or writing practice in each of those spaces that can be really helpful. And probably each of us, there would be reason to be doing all three of these exercises because we are sort of experiencing such sort of dynamic movement across that spectrum in this time as well. And so my first thing, so how do we deal? Well, when we're in that sort of depressive state, when we're feeling really low, what is it that we can do? How can we cope and navigate that space really well? Well, I'm really drawn to the idea of making anxiety our friend, or making those low points our friend. Typically in those spaces, we tend to think of those experiences as being like something of an enemy or an attack on us. But Jacques Lacan, who was a French psychologist, he sort of posited that actually, the word symptom is the same, is the same as Saint Home, which means holy man, and that our symptoms, when we are experiencing something or displaying some sort of emotional response, actually that serves as a holy man, as a prophet. It comes to reveal truth to us, to engage with us about something, and so I'm quite captivated by that as a notion that actually if an anxiety comes to me, or a sense of panic comes upon me, or a sense of anger or sadness, actually a really healthy thing for me to do is to engage with it. Okay, what is this trying to say? What is it revealing to me about what I'm going through, what I'm feeling, and how do I give voice to that? And so this is where the writing down of something becomes very helpful. So here's a first very simple thing you could do if you're feeling incredibly low. You can write down this question or think about this question. What do I need to hear about myself that I have not been giving space for? And so then just sit with that, reflect on it, invite God into that process, ask Jesus to be with you, and just treat it as a revelatory moment. What is this experience trying to teach me? As we move along the spectrum a little bit and we sort of sit in that period of languishing a little bit, when we're sort of apathetic, sort of lacking a bit of motivation, struggling to drive things to completion, what is it that we can do? What I want to propose, and this I think is what I've seen probably over the last 6 months as I've engaged with languishing as a concept, but I think the concept of languishing is tied to the burden of productivity. What I mean by that is that particularly in a lockdown sense, we're all trying to stay as productive as possible. Some of us are more busy than normal. The sort of stresses of our vocation sort of demand that we're just way more engaged with what we're doing. Others of us might be in situations where we feel like, oh, this is really different sort of working from home, and I need to be able to prove my worth, so prove my value. And then other people may just kind of they're sort of anxiously twiddling their thumbs, which begins to disconnect them from a sense of purpose. All of those things, regardless of where you are, can contribute to a real sense of, panic or uncertainty, and can really begin to dull your motivation, because the tank sort of just empties so much faster when you're in that space. And so it's like you've got to drive harder and harder and harder to get the same results, and the goals just seem further and further away. So I think the secret to navigating the languishing space is really to be able to extend a kindness to ourselves. In the scriptures in Luke 10:38-42, one of my favorite stories that resonates so much with me is when Jesus goes to visit the house of his friends Martha and Mary, and you've got Martha just running around trying to do the right thing, trying to be hospitable, trying to create a space for people to step into, doing the thing that she is supposed to do, and she gets so frustrated with her sister Mary for basically just sitting at Jesus' feet and teaching. But Jesus says, Martha, you are anxious and you're troubled about many things, but one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her. And there is this sense, I feel, that when we are languishing, we have to be able to step back to it, almost paradoxically, let go of the reins of needing to be productive, of needing to prove something. It's almost like that's such a tight thing, but actually being willing to let that go and go, what is it that I need? What does it look like to just receive from Jesus? What does it look like to give myself some Sabbath rest? What does it look like? And so to be able to go, what kindness do I need to be able to extend to myself? And that is your second sustaining practice while you're on the static journey. What kindness do I need to extend to myself? A writing practice, a reflective practice, a contemplative practice. Sit with that a little bit. And then finally, as we move into this space of flourishing, when we're starting to feel, actually, I'm feeling pretty connected to the work I'm doing. I'm feeling pretty connected to my relationships, even though things in lockdown are really hard. I'm actually feeling pretty good. What is something we can do in this space? Well, for me, I think the most helpful thing we can do is to be embedded in a practice of gratitude. I think gratitude galvanizes stuff. It cements us in a consistency, and I think that what we tend to do when things are going really well is we tend to just take things for granted. Think about any time you're sick and how sort of desperately you look forward to being able to not have to blow your nose again or not be coughing again, and you're like, oh, I'll never take it for granted. But within 24 hours you've stopped thinking about it. It's very easy to stop being grateful when things are going really well. And so to be intentional in your practice of gratitude. St. Francis of Assisi, his whole ethos, his whole way of being was anchored in basically starting each day with a sense of gratitude. Gratitude lied at the heart of sort of informing every one of his actions. And it was a way of drawing him into connection with God and into connection with creation, and sort of entering into like relationship with all of that. And then that would inform the way that he lived. And so gratitude is this incredibly powerful thing. And so just being able to do as sort of our third sustaining practice in this sort of static journey is to explore this question, what am I grateful for? I think that is really powerful. Write it down, reflect on it, contemplate it, and see what comes up as you sit in it with God. And so those are my sort of three things. They're very simple. It's not rocket science, but they are things that just drop off the radar. And so to be able to bring these things back into the forefront, to place a value on nurturing our mental well-being during this time, I think is like critically important. And so I offer them the questions of, what do I need to hear about myself that I've not been giving space for? What kindness do I need to extend to myself? And what am I grateful for? To close, I just love to read a benediction I wrote for you. I'll leave this and some other resources linked at the bottom of the video, and we'll see you soon. So, may you seek solace in the Lord's embrace, and in humility his gentle guidance. May you welcome the anxiety, depression, and uncertainty as a friend, open, willing, and responsive to the revelation it intends to bring. May you reject the conflation of productivity and worth, and kindly accept the invitation of a good portion. May you delight in the expression of gratitude and find fulfillment in the acknowledgement of all that is good. May you find wisdom and perspective in the tension, and grant yourself permission to feel what is needed. And may you recognize the nearness of God, never indifferent to where you move. Aroha nui. See you soon, family.
Our hearts adore. Jesus, we love you. Oh, how we love you. You are the one that our hearts adore, that our hearts adore.